grateful to Mr. Carte for this invitation. It's something I've enjoyed doing over the years. I think the story of how this all developed was quite humorous. I've had a lot of fun saying it. I don't know exactly how you started this in your class, but the key word was talking about Artemis 2 and the moon landings earlier, and I think you were reported to said something like, but all these guys are dead now.
Yes.
Not quite. There's one hanging on. No, one of the reasons that I'm not one of the dead guys now is because when this all started in my life, I was 19. Not very much different than you guys. 2 years of college at that point, and I got a remarkable summer job at the Space Center in Houston, where my father was working. He was a systems analyst, computer programming. He designed programs that they used for, goodness, I think they had to translate his programs into 3 different languages over the years. They were so good. I didn't understand any of it. My skill is not in the area of mathematics. It's absolutely my worst subject. But God gave me the gift of gab, and I could talk. And it turned out that the summer job came upon me when I was in the middle of school at Florida State University. And they called and said, we talked to your mom on the phone. She said you were not in town, but to call you anyway. They said, we're going to be landing on the moon this summer. And we need an extra protocol officer, which in plain language is kind of like a glorified tour guide. And I said, I'd love it. Well, you'd have to leave early because we need to get you up to speed on the missions and your job. So you'll have to show up. So on the 1st of April, I showed up, and it was 6 weeks later that one of our rockets went to the moon and went through all the steps of landing on the moon, except they didn't land. They came back up. And this is really the theme of how we approached the landing on the moon back in the 1960s, and the way that, frankly, with any kind of test you do it, it's step by step. You take the new technology and you try it. You don't try everything new all at once. And that's why this time Artemis 2 did not land on the moon. We wanted to make sure, can this spacecraft make the trip, get astronauts around the moon and bring them back? We didn't even trust slowing down to go into lunar orbit. We put them on a slingshot route coming back so that if nothing else worked, they'd get back to Earth, because we did the calculations on that. And that's that step-by-step thing that happened back in the day. But let's go back even further, because you see, people have always wanted to think about going to the moon. How would we actually get there? Imaginations ran wild, as you can see. The 1950s started to bring around some more interest in landing on the moon. You notice the moon there? You notice what these astronauts are not wearing on the moon? Space helmets. So it's like, okay, Hollywood, this makes interesting stuff, but and then they started reversing it, and they talked about aliens coming to us. If you have not seen this movie, the 1951 classic, The Day the Earth Stood Still, it is worth it to go through the old black and white style of movies to see it, because it says more about movie making than it does about the drama here. But as a kid, I loved it. His robot's words, when he gets wounded, he comes out, he's getting ready to destroy everything. And this woman who, she and his son, her son have gotten to know, she has to remember as he's dying, go to the robot or he'll destroy the world. You've got to remember these instructions: Gort, Klaatu, Parado, Nipto. I was excited about space, but I had no idea that I would be taking part in it. I got even more excited when Walt Disney decided to bring on Werner von Braun, the former German rocket scientist whose V2s Killed a lot of people in London back in World War II. But he and a group of his scientists defected to the United States after World War II. Tomorrowland in Disney is based on this whole expectation. And we were excited about what it would be like. And then one day in 1957, the earth really stood still. As we heard from high above us, way high above us, the sound of a satellite, a man-made satellite that was orbiting the earth. And suddenly, people who had just 12 years before finished defeating an evil that was determined to take over the world realized that another evil, now in the form of the Soviet Union, had the capability to send things right over us. And the thought just freaked us out. And everyone started asking, what are we going to do about this? Well, we had done some work on what it would be like to send rockets into space and Earth orbit and so on like this. But the first thing we would need to do is we needed to get some men, some good test pilots, who could become our first astronauts. These are the Mercury 7. The first of these men. 6 of them were able to make a flight. Another one, because of an inner ear problem, was grounded until 1975, when he was finally able to go into space. But that's another story in all of that too. And we started training them, but before we could get any of them up into space, the Soviets launched the first man into space, who returned safely, Yuri Gagarin. And he famously announced as he came back with the communist propaganda, I didn't see God up there. Well, we continued on our process. We looked at the Mercury project, a one-man capsule that we could send up in different ways. The first of these that you see here is the smaller one on an Army rocket, Redstone rocket. It only had the capability to lift this capsule up into space and let it fall back down, splash down to the ocean from which it recovered. But to get it into orbit, we need the larger Atlas booster that you see there. And it was that one that we really needed to work on. Alan Shepard, our first man into space, flew that Redstone rocket in, returned safely to the Earth, and it gave President Kennedy at that time, our first Catholic president, by as a matter of time, the opportunity to use this momentum to say, we need to go further. I used to love as a kid, as a tour guide, mimicking his voice. I would never really do it when I was at work because it might have seemed cheesy, but I loved it. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. I mean, it was fun because nobody talked like the Kennedys. They had distinctive accents. Especially in Texas, that's for sure. And so it was that John Glenn, our third astronaut to go into space, made his orbits around the Earth in his Mercury capsule, and he did return safely. Almost not, though, because there was an indicator light that the heat shield was loose, and we thought he might not make it back. That heat shield was designed to burn, knowing that it's the friction that causes the burn. You're going at such a high speed. When you get into the Earth's atmosphere, you have how many bazillions of molecules passing by this, rubbing against the surface of the spacecraft, and it's going to heat up. And so the idea was you control the burn. You give it material that it can burn, but not burn all the way through. And that's the mission behind that. Well, he returned safely, and here in New York, he got ticker tape parade. Showed President Kennedy his capsule, and we were ready to go. From that point on, then, after his mission, 3 other astronauts went into Earth orbit. They spent longer and longer up there. What are the effects of that? Step by step, we're looking to see what would happen. But we knew we would need more astronauts. So, as it turns out, what they call the Gemini 8 were brought here. Elliot C., who died in a plane crash before he could get into space. Jim McDivitt, my kid sisters used to babysit his kids. Crazy. Jim Lovell, who went up twice and never got to set foot on the moon because he was the commander of Apollo 13, the ill-fated mission there. Ed White, talk about his death in a moment. Tom Stafford, who actually went to the moon twice, landed once. Pete Conrad, Apollo 12 commander. Frank Borman, who commanded the first mission around the moon, like Artemis went around the moon, and then came back. John Young in the far end, and then the last fellow there with the very short haircut is Neil Armstrong, the man who would be the first to set foot on the moon. New spacecraft capsule. We knew we were going to have more men in space, and we needed to spend longer in space and do more once we were up there. Gemini, so named for the twins, were entirely Earth orbital spacecraft, and we're pushing out the envelope, as we would say, of new knowledge and technology. Among the things that we needed to do was to see what is the effect on leaving a capsule and being exposed to various forms of radiation in space. Ed White, who I mentioned earlier, was the first of our astronauts to go into space. But then we realized we're going to need to rendezvous, because the whole idea behind a lunar mission is going to be you have two spacecraft that separate from one another, and they're going to have to come back together. So we practiced having two spacecraft go up and meet each other, launched at different times, but able to do that. We also practiced, you can call it target practice, if you will, connecting, docking with an unmanned spacecraft. We have to dock these. What's the technology to use? You know, when you're flying in space, you're not flying through air particles. You have to use little jets to control your movement. And your complete access of 360 degrees, two different directions, and if you've ever done any kind of gaming where you had to control something like that, you know how tough that is, how tough that can be. So we set up 12 of these, extended the stay in space, and avoided some serious accidents, but we learned what we needed. But the goal is always the moon. Kennedy said, we should get there within this decade. He said nothing would challenge us more. And frankly, nothing was more important to us politically than that. It was a time of great political upheaval after World War II, and the Soviet Union was trying to get the new nations of the world in a period where colonies have now become their own countries. They wanted to side with them. And of course, we wanted them to side with us, and who are they going to choose? One of the things that the Soviets really did well is they started to do the PR battle and said, you know, we've got the technology, we got the first man in space, we can do this, we can do that, and no matter what they say about their capitalism and how it's better over on the long term, we'll show you what we can do. And frankly, in the world of dogs and politics, the big dog always gets people on their side. We had to demonstrate that people who would side with us would not only be safe, they would be able to hitch their wagons to our stars for the future. But technologically, to get there, step by step. Well, what are those steps? As you can see in this drawing, you're looking at the comparative sizes of those capsules. 3 astronauts in the spacecraft that would bring them safely back to Earth. A command module, as we would call it, where they lived. The service module that had all of their supplies, fuel, oxygen, everything else that they needed to make these spacecraft work, and the lunar rover attached to it. So how is this to work? And why did these look so strange? One of the key reasons that this one looks so strange is because it is so lightweight. The whole thing had to do with weight. How much could this lift? How much could we get into space? Everything had to be accounted for. This did not need to survive the atmosphere. And so we tucked it neatly away right behind the capsule and hid it in here so that during the launch into space, nothing could get it. And as you'll see in just a moment, we retrieved it and got it out. Let's see, what are these steps? Oh, there's von Braun. He was the one that created the most powerful rocket that was ever built until these last few years, when Elon Musk has managed to create something that is even more powerful. It's monstrous. You can see the size of it compared to people walking around. I think this is in Houston. They can actually now put that rocket inside a building. That's part of the tour there. If you get the chance to go there, it's something to see. The plan is to launch it, all 3 stages, to get these into space. We needed all of that, filled mostly with fuel. The first stage used up all its fuel in about 2.5 minutes. I don't even remember the numbers. I didn't look them up before I came. We dispensed with that first stage, and then the second stage. The purpose of those first 2 stages is simply to get this part of the rocket into orbit. That's all it took. Once it's in orbit and you're positioned properly, you fire its lone rocket engine, which doesn't have to lift a whole lot. We just have to get it out of Earth orbit and send it on its way to the moon. Well, on the way to the moon, that's when you open up the back of the spacecraft there, turn around, pull out that lunar module, and that's what goes to the moon, just like this. Once at the moon, 2 astronauts inside the lunar module land it. The third stays above in the command module, while the other 2 make their approach and finally they're landing on the moon. The idea was that they would then put out some experiments, plant a flag, and then finally return just in the upper stage. This is the part where they didn't need to bring all this back because they had their supplies, their equipment for research down there, and that's all that needed to go back. You reestablish contact with the module that way, and the astronauts go in there, they dump this, its orbit decays, and it crashes into the moon from that point. And then the astronauts head back toward the Earth. The service module, just before re-entering the atmosphere, is jettisoned. You flip over this big gumdrop-shaped thing, and again, controlled burn on the outside. The astronauts safely return. Everything goes as planned. The parachutes open up, they land, and they're recovered. These are the missions of the Apollo project. We actually had planned to send 3 others into space, but after the success of the first 6 lunar landings, we cut NASA's budget back, and one of these lunar modules, which, by the way, were designed and built out here in Bethpage, New York. And one of these that was supposed to be Apollo 19 is in the Flight Museum. The real one. Nope, nothing in the tanks or anything now. But that's what the plan was there. And so that's what we began to do. Peter, can I get you to put that back on there, please? Rather not worry about that. Thank you, sir. All right. There was the rocket. We were sent to test it, and here was the first curve. Never made it off the launch pad because during a standard test, the wire sparked inside a 100% oxygen atmosphere. And within less than a minute, they were burned to death. They could not get out. We did put the entire project on hold, redesigned the door completely, and the rest of the crews were ready to go. But we remember these men because they were the first to sacrifice us. We've never lost a man in space. We've lost some on the ground. We tested the command module, and again, from above Earth's atmosphere, they could see our goal. There was the moon. And a decision was made to send the rocket, the first command and service module, to the moon on Apollo 8. It was on Christmas Eve on 1968, a very difficult year in our American history, that with a mission very similar to Artemis, just to loop around the moon, that these men managed to see the far side of the moon for the very, very first time. Thank you, Peter. And got views of craters that we've never seen, because the way the moon rotates, it exactly mirrors its rotation around the Earth, so that we never see anything but the same side there. And as they orbited the moon, an incredible sight came up. For the very first time, we had a chance to see what the Earth looked like from the moon. This picture, which was named Earthrise, was remarkable. When the astronauts got this film back, it was developed, people were astonished to see Earth hanging out in the blackness of space. All of our experience with Earth has been down here, looking around. But to see what an incredible, precious piece of living space had been crafted out of this vast universe, and how specially we've learned over the years that God had placed it so that it is possible for life not only to exist but to thrive on this planet. He made it specially for his children. But to see it changed our way of looking at things. Well, we still had more tests to do. We've tested the command module and the service module, but not the lunar module. So we had to send up a whole crew, again, step by step, around the Earth. Let's separate them, bring them back together, so we can see exactly what it is that they could we do this? Does the equipment work? Were we able to separate? You'll notice the background there is not the moon. That's the Earth. That's the oceans down there. And drop the lower part, look around. Does it all work? Yep. And so now, let's try the same thing on the moon. Apollo 10. The exact plan for the Apollo 11 landing, except when Tom Stafford got this lunar module down to within a matter of 10 miles above the lunar surface. Mission plan was, no, you don't keep going, Tom, bring it back. I mean, would you think, man, all he had to do was just keep going, but no, there was two step by step. Never push it beyond what we can do. Finally, it came to the point where we were ready for the mission. And this is 19 years old. I had a chance to watch these men from afar. Some of whom we had met, and with the other protocol officers like myself, we were able to look at, talk to them, ask them about their experiences, try to get some idea of what they would be experiencing there and how we could describe it to other people. On their way to their moon mission, everything going according to plan. Neil Armstrong landed this thing. The computer wanted to put him down in the middle of a crater. He took over control, pushed it further, and with less than 30 seconds left of fuel, he landed. He was about to run out of fuel. He would have had to drop the lower half, return into space, and Apollo 12 would have tried the landing for the first time. This is what we saw from our TV rooms. Neil Armstrong then uttered those words that have been repeated so often. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. And there he is on the moon, a desolate place. Controllers there keeping track of everything going on in their spacecraft while we looked. Here's the viewing room behind that control center. As it looks now, they've restored it and used it as part of their tour so that people can see what it was like then. And that's where I was. But I was up on the back row. I was invited to come in, and the person I was responsible for escorting at that time was Werner von Braun. I looked at my boss when he told me, John, you need to go over to the control center viewing room. You're going to be on standby in case von Braun needs to go somewhere. And I'm thinking to myself, Werner von Braun's not going anywhere. I got into the room, and there he is sitting front row center. This was his life's work. And I thought, my boss just gave me a chance to get in here. And so I checked in, and the guy said, we'll just take a seat somewhere. And I thought, okay, I don't want them to ask me to leave. So I walked up to the back row, and there's a row behind there, and I got into the corner. There was a nice shadow there, and I stayed in the corner so nobody would come up and ask me to leave. I stood there from about halfway through the moonwalk to the end of it. So there, 19-year-old kid turned into a 10-year assignment with NASA. Your teachers have their access badges, identity badges. This was mine. This gave me access to Mission Control Center as a grant. The one on the back is for the Apollo 13 mission. I've kept those two because I thought those would be the most memorable. But there they are on the moon. There's Buzz Aldrin, the second command, came down afterwards. And finally, they left to go back to Earth and reunited. Earth and their skies got closer, closer, and finally, they hit the edge of the atmosphere, came back in, landed, and we isolated them in an Airstream trailer for 4 weeks, 28 days, because we didn't know what kind of bugs there were out there in space. And we thought, you know what? Let's just be sure. So before we could give them their ticker tape parade in New York, we had to make sure they didn't bring back any viruses or something that's going to kill all the human race or something. Now here's my buddy. This is a piece of the moon that they brought back. As a matter of fact, this particular one is the piece that I had a chance to take to the Texas State Fair. They needed somebody to escort this thing. I said, I'll go. And so I got on the plane, and they had a seat for me and a seat for the moon rock. And it was in a case there, and all closed, and nobody in the plane knew what I had. It was a big blue kind of box, but I knew, and I escorted the moon rock. Back in the day when I first met my wife's family, I was trying to explain to her grandfather what I did at NASA. I explained protocols. And finally, after about 5 or 6 minutes of just not getting through, Cindy looks at her grandfather and says, Grandpa, he takes moon rocks to state fairs. Oh, okay, I get that. I mean, the knowledge, the general science knowledge we had in those days was just squat. And so I really had a chance to make people feel close to what was going on. Because we could describe science stuff in terms of analogies, what it's like, and carry moon rocks, cool stuff. Apollo 12 made its second landing. These guys were comedians. Pete Conrad, they're an all-Navy team, and they seem to love it. Apollo 13 never made the moon landing because on their way, a spark went off in the back, blew up the whole side of this, and they had to use the oxygen and fuel and everything else that was in their lunar module as a lifeboat to get them back. And we did get them back. There was a time when we were. There's Fred Hayes up on the monitor that you can see there, and he's Apollo 13 man pilot there. But we got him back safely. That's quite a story. When I saw it recreated in the 1995 Tom Hanks movie, I took my 10-year-old son Mark with me. And when we got back to the movie, his older sisters asked him, what was it like? He said, Dad cried. I said, you know what? All I remember is that we really thought we lost it. If you've ever seen that movie, you'll know it goes just to the end, you know, you don't hear from them in 4 minutes, they like them burned up. They're dead. All that we did to get them back, just gone like that. But we got them back. And that was important time. Alan Shepard, our first man into space, commanded Apollo 14 and took up his own golf club handle and golf ball up in the moon. That just went forever, it seems. Apollo 15 was the first to use the lunar rover to give them more range. And you notice the background's a little bit different. There are mountains all around there. We went from the plains to the mountains because we're looking for different kinds of rock samples. And they found one they were especially interested in on that. So that moon landing was a success. My sisters used to babysit for his family too. Dave Scott commanded that mission. Apollo 16, and finally, the last one, Apollo 17, the night launch. Unusual, but they made it. When they left the moon, now there are 6 of these lower parts of the lunar module still there, waiting on the lunar surface. That was only the beginning. We had Skylab, which was we turned the 3rd stage into a laboratory, created up there, although it didn't survive very nicely, and the outer skin pulled away, which meant it was really hot inside there. So we actually had to come up with a new plan and put a heat-reflecting umbrella outside of the top of there. They could actually move around and had room to even take a shower in there in space. Skylab. We were from Skylab, 1975, kind of a beginning of the era of detente, where we were trying to just kind of smooth things out with the Soviets. We had a combined American and Soviet crew. Alexei Leonov, the commander, who is one of their space heroes. They launched from the Soviet Union. We launched from America, and up in space they managed to join. Opened up the docking between them, said some nice words, took some photographs. But now it was time to get on to the next phase, and that is the space shuttle. Why is it on top of a 747? Because before we want to put a rocket in there and send it into space, we need to make sure we can land this thing step by step, as it turns out. And so, above the Mojave Desert out in California, we popped off that rascal and landed it. By the way, this is the one that you can now see in Hudson River and the Intrepid, the aircraft carrier there. I got reunited with my old buddy here, as it turns out. We have lots of VIPs around, and I got to plan the visits. By this time, I've been with NASA for nearly a decade, had a lot of experience in planning these, and I got to plan the visit for a particularly notable man. Anybody recognize that fellow? He's a bit older these days. This is the Crown Prince of England in 1978. He is now Prince Charles. Prince Charles, sorry. Spent a lifetime seeing Prince Charles. You can't get used to seeing King Charles. But there I was, right beside him. Again, just brushing shoulders with history. It's kind of cool. Astronaut Dave Scott, who was my boss there, was the Apollo 15 commander. He now commanded that test center. And the space shuttle began its many missions with new technology stretching even further. We put a huge new telescope up there named after Edwin Hubble, one of our earlier and our finest astronomers. Gave us some views of the universe that we've never had before. This International Space Station has been up there for quite a while now, but still, there's the moon. And that always before us, the idea of returning back to the moon. But we need different equipment. It's been over half a century since we were there. So this facility down in the tip of Texas is where Elon Musk is testing his spacecraft. Artemis went up, and you heard about that. Again, just a slingshot around that area. They had a chance to photograph the far side of the moon, not the dark side. They get light on that side too as the moon rotates, but the far side. Dark side is saved for Star Wars. That's another entirely different thing. And there it is again, a new picture of the Earthrise from our newest crew. Someday, they're actually going to land that thing on the moon, and hopefully in another 2 years. I don't know if they'll have the new rover that they show there, but it will be the first step, step by step, because we have now our eyes on something other than just the moon. That's our next stop. Well, my friends, I have managed to do my job of storytelling and use up quite a bit of time here, but we still have time for questions. I'll be glad to talk with you about that. Yes?
Did the Russians ever make it onto the moon?
They did not. They were close. Their technology was just not soon enough, and so we beat them to it, and they killed their whole lunar program. What's the point? And they said, "Oh, we made it second. We got the silver medal." No, didn't need to do that. It was actually ruining their economy to spend money on their moon flight too. Anything else?
Do you think our future would have base on the moon?
I would say that by the time you are my age, which will be half a century from now, they're going to have a base on Mars. Why? Why go?
Because there's water, like frozen water beneath Mars' surface.
You're talking about how we can go, how we can pull it off. The question I'm asking is why? Go. Because what? Because we can. I'm going to say because we should. When God made humans, the first human beings, He told us that the purpose that He has for us is to take command of His creation. He wanted to make us regents over His creation. And so there's something within us that has always pushed us to explore and push out more and more and more. Whether people recognize the God of the universe or not, the fact is that that's part of who they are as human beings. We cannot not go. The only thing that slows us down might be technology, but it doesn't have to be boldness. And that's why we will keep on going. That's why I'm confident that I can say that half a century from now, we'll not only have a good operating base on the moon, likely around its south pole, where I think we can get water and turn some of that into oxygen and hydrogen fuel. That's how I see what will happen there. Mars is another situation. I love the movie based on Andy Weir's book, The Martian. Matt Damon starred in. He is one incredible science writer, and everything he talked about is so completely believable to me, based on the knowledge of science that I have, which again is not extensively deep, but I know enough about it to be able to describe to you what's going on. I started out as a tour guide. In many ways, the life that God has given me has continued to be to give people tours through things that I know, that I've experienced, that give them a chance to understand or even get excited about their own futures. Well, I'd be very glad to have you come up, take a look at my models here, touch some of this stuff. This you want to be able to say, maybe you will, maybe you won't. This little piece contains metal of the Apollo 11 lunar landing. Now, it's infinitesimal, no doubt. I mean, they took a piece of the spacecraft, put it in a big vat of metal, melted it all down, and gave all 10,000 of us at the Space Center who worked there during the landing a piece of this. But it's in there. And you can say, I have touched something that has been to the moon. So if that's your life's goal, you can die today after touching that. But if you just want to say, I touched something cool, that would be it. Again, Mr. Cronkite, thank you for your invitation today.
Thank you so much.
Please come on up, take a look, touch some of these things.